How was dinner? Great. I see a lot of head nods. Yeah. Fantastic. And thank you for all of those who have hosted and opened up your homes and your tables. I know we got to be on the receiving end of some of that, and it was delicious. And it is good to be here and have the blessing of the next generation of the children that God has blessed us with. Lots to celebrate. So I'm going to start us in Luke's account of the birth of Jesus. In Luke 2, verses 1 through 7. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all went to be registered, each to his own town. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there is no place for them in the... We know this story. We love this story. We have our plays, our pageants, our manger scenes. We know it. But a lot of those details that we depict in our manger scenes and our nativities, that we reenact in our stories, some of those details have their root and their foundation in later Christian tradition. Centuries of Christian writings, imagination, artwork, sometimes elaborating on the gospel accounts, filling in some of the details, all with good intentions. These are the things that have helped us love these stories, to remember these stories. And sometimes it even heightens the drama a little bit. Here's Mary and Joseph. They're traveling to Bethlehem. They're on a donkey. She's about to give birth. They're running out of time. Things are busy. A lot going on in the city. They come to the inn. No room there. What are they going to do now? Moses finally says, all right, or not Moses, Joseph, we've been in Exodus too much. Joseph, I wanted to do it again. I wanted to say Moses. I cannot get out of Moses. Joseph, again, he takes and he goes and he finds a barn, a little detached, a lonely, dark place. They give birth. Mary wraps him up, lays him in the manger. Whew. We made it. It all works out. But when we look at Luke's account in the gospel, the way he tells the story is surprisingly simple. So I want us tonight to go back and look at some of the language that Luke uses to understand a little bit of the cultural background and context, and see if we're just maybe a little bit surprised that maybe there's no innkeeper, maybe no inn, maybe no harsh treatment of this young family and being rejected, and no room being made for him. See, what if the story of Jesus being born isn't a story of a world that was too busy to recognize him, too busy to accept him, too busy to recognize what God was doing? What if instead this is a story of a world that was busy, but in the midst of that busyness, there is a people who is still interruptible, still paying attention and open to what God is doing, and aware of his presence? What if this line that we're so used to, there's no room for the inn, isn't a story about not making room for Jesus because it's too busy and there's too much going on, but it's the reverse. In the midst of all the busyness, in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of all the demands of life, they made room. They were aware of his presence in the midst of everything that life throws at us. Because we're almost there, aren't we? Christmas is around the corner, and I got news. I don't think it's slowing down. We've got demands. We've got stressful things coming up. Packed December schedules. School concerts, school plays, church events and activities and gatherings. Some of you might be hosting events. Well, there's the cleaning, there's the getting ready, there's the planning, and there's that thought of, I just want everything to be just right. The family expectations, oh man, where are we spending Christmas this year? Some of us have to manage some of the extended family dynamics, financial pressures of gifts, travel, food, generosity, that quiet anxiety of, are we doing enough? Parental pressure. Are we taking the time to create meaningful moments for our kids? And then there's that emotional weight that can come this time of year from having lost loved ones and the grief that is still fresh. And the thing about Christmas and being busy is these aren't bad things. A lot of it's good things. But sometimes the stacking up of all the good things can have the potential to start crowding out our ability to sense and to celebrate and to have the joy and the peace of the awareness of the presence of God. So the question I want to put to us this evening is, what if God is not asking us to stop doing some of these good things? He might be. That'll be something you have to discern as a family. But what if he's not saying, these aren't bad things. They're good things. But what the invitation is, in the midst of these good things, what I want you to do and what I'm inviting you to do is to be aware of my very presence that is with you. Isn't that what the Christmas story is about? Emmanuel, the God who is with us, the God who has come to dwell among us. So I want to look tonight at just a little bit at Luke's simple narrative and look at this line especially that happens in Luke verse 7, but we'll read verses 6 and 7 here. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in a swaddling cloths and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. Now sometimes we read that, it's like, okay, they just rolled in the nick of time. Can I give you a little bit more literal translation of the Greek? So the days had passed while they were there. The days were fulfilled. It's the days were plerao, that had come to pass. And it came for her to deliver. There had been days leading up to her delivering. And where were they? Verse 4 tells us right before, and they were in Bethlehem. So they didn't just arrive in Bethlehem. This wasn't a nick of time, oh my goodness, we just barely made it event. They'd been there for days. There was time to make arrangements. And sometimes for me, I can think of Joseph as this like, well, does he not know how this works? A little bit clueless? Kind of like some of the, like the Archie Bunkers and some of those 70s sitcoms that some of you know? Not at all. Not Joseph. Joseph was strong, he was courageous, he was wise. In fact, he was navigating a lot at this point in the story. Because he now is betrothed to a woman who was pregnant. The way it worked in Jewish customs back there, and you would be betrothed, and then you'd have the time when you actually consummate the marriage. And for a woman to be pregnant in there, especially not from the man that she was betrothed to, that's not good. That puts her at risk for a lot of things. And in fact, there's two different schools, the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel, that were in the region of the Galilee at that time. Had all different interpretations of the Mosaic law of what could happen to her. Joseph could have done this alone. That would have been normal when you do this kind of census. He doesn't. He's got her with him. Why? He's protecting her. He's shielding her. He's making sure nothing happens to her back in the Galilee. They had just left the Galilee. And he's making sure that she's not vulnerable. Joseph's got Mary with him. and they arrive at Bethlehem. Now, Joseph is from Bethlehem. This is his hometown. Hometowns in the Middle East, they don't forget their own. They would have known him. All he would have had to say was, I'm Joseph, son of Jacob, son of Mathan, son of Eliezer. And they would have said, come on in. Your family, you are welcome here. That's part of the hospitality of this region. But it's even more than that. He was royal. He's of the line of David. David was also from Bethlehem. Locally, they would refer to Bethlehem at this time as the city of David. So not only do you have somebody that's family of origins, this is family of origins that are of royal lineage. There's no way they're turning him away. That would have been dishonorable. In these cultures, their honor of their village is tied to their hospitality and being welcoming. I've been there. We've been with these Bedouin communities around that area in the Palestinian territory around Bethlehem. They welcome you in, even if you're a stranger. It's beautiful, and it's like that still even today. But let's just say, for entertainment's sake, they didn't welcome him. They had time. They don't go anywhere else. They could have gone to her cousin's house. She was just there a couple months earlier. Lucas just talked to us about Elizabeth. Elizabeth lived in the hill countries of Judea. Guess where Bethlehem is? In the middle of Judea. They've got relatives real close. They would have taken them in, but they don't do it. Why not? Because they were welcomed in Bethlehem. There was room for them. Well, then what of the text? There was no room for them in the inn. What do we do with that? If you look at the language there, and it says there's no room for them in the inn in some of your translations. Other translations will say no place. That'd be a better translation of topos in the Greek. It's either a place or a space. There's no space for them. We think room, and we're like, oh, this is a room. I know what this is. This is a room. The Motel 6 didn't leave the light on for them. We know what hotels are. But the language here isn't of a commercial inn. It's not a hotel, not a motel, not a Holiday Inn. When Luke wants to speak of that kind of establishment, which is more akin to Roman culture, not Jewish culture, and there was no roads, major roads going through Bethlehem that would have given need for a hotel or an inn to be there, but Luke has language for that. See, the language he uses here for the inn is kataluma. There was no room, there was no space in the kataluma. But when he wants to use the language of talking about a commercial inn, like a hotel, he uses a different word. And it shows up in the parable of the Good Samaritan. When the Samaritan takes the wounded man, he takes him to an inn. And he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. Pendokeon. It's a different word. It doesn't use the word kataluma. Two different things for Luke. But then in Luke 22, Jesus is sending his disciples to go prepare a room for Passover. He said to them, behold, when you have entered the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him into the house that he enters. And tell the master of the house, the teacher says to you, where is the guest room, where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room furnished. Prepare it there. What's the guest room? The kataluma, the same language that we see at the beginning of the story. So a kataluma is a guest room in a private house. So if there's a private house there, why is he putting a manger? They have mangers in their houses? Animals in their houses? They did. You had your animals in your house. In your normal, simple, commoner houses, there would be 2 rooms. One would be the living area, and one would be a lower level where the animals would be in there with you. And there's 2 reasons why they did this. The first one was because in the cold of the winter, the animals would help heat the house from their body heat that they would emit. The second reason is these are a hot, fine commodity. You didn't want your animal stolen. So at night, you bring them in, might tie them near the manger, and you let them stay in for the night. You take them back out in the morning. And this idea of having animals in the houses, it goes all throughout Scripture. So it shows up even in the book of Judges going way back. There's a character by the name of Jephthah in Judges 11. And he does this weird thing where he makes a vow before God and says, the next thing that comes outside my door, I'm going to offer to the Lord. It's like, well, who would do such nonsense? Because he expects an animal to come out. Unfortunately, it's his daughter that comes out. Now, he doesn't offer her as a sacrifice. That's not the language. He fulfills the vow by dedicating her to lifelong service in the temple. But then there's another story in 1 Samuel. It's the woman who's in Endor. King Saul is there with his servants. He hasn't eaten. She's going to feed him. And then you look at verse 28, I think it's verse 4, 28, 24. She makes a meal. And she kills the fattened calf that was in the house. She doesn't have to go outside to get it. It's in the house. This was part of the culture and the custom. Jesus even picks up on this in Luke. And you look at the languages here. So Jesus, he heals somebody in Luke 13. He heals a woman for 18 years. She has a disability where she's hunched over. She can't stand up straight. So Jesus heals her, and he uses the language apaluo. That word luo means to release, to loose, to untie. Not a typical word you would use for healing somebody. Well, it's on a Sabbath. And the rulers of the synagogue are not happy about this. He's healing on the Sabbath. And what does Jesus say to them? He responds by saying, didn't you all luo, loose, untie your ox and your donkey? How much more then should I not untie, unbound this woman and allow her to be healed? And not one of the rulers says, no, we didn't do that today. It was a Sabbath. They had all done it. Why? Because that morning, they untied their donkey or their ox from near the manger in their house, and they let it outside to where there was water. And if they didn't, well, they're nasty. I mean, they're unclean. You're not going to leave your animal in there all day long. That was the time that you would clean. In fact, most of these were built on a small slope, so you'd sweep the house out and get everything back cleaned up. So animals were in these houses in these simple villages, and they were built in 2 parts. Let's see if I got chalk here. You have a lower part, and then this upper room. This would be the living space where they would eat, sleep, do life together. It was cleaned because all the animals were down here. And then oftentimes you'd have 2 mangers that were dug into the floor. And so the animals, if they were the ox or the donkeys, they would come up here and feed. And then for the sheep, you'd have a manger. And oftentimes, again, these were built into caves even. So if you look at some of the other early Christian writings, they'll suggest that Jesus was possibly born in a cave. That would make sense even with the house, because a lot of these houses, you look at the slopes in Bethlehem, they would have been built into caves. But when Luke, what he says is, there's no room in the kataluma. This would have been a guest room. There are often rooms that were attached, and sometimes they would be on top. That's why they call it an upper room, because the rooftops were flat, and sometimes there would be another attachment. And that's the guest room. So what's the story then? They get to Bethlehem. Is it busy? Oh yeah, it's busy. They had the census going on. There was probably a lot of hustle and bustle. Is there an inn? No. They go to a private house. They're welcome in. When the days had come for her to give birth, the men probably would have gone to the neighbors, the women would have gathered around her, they would have supported her, especially in this culture. It doesn't matter what the scenario are, they're not going to turn away a woman who is about to give birth and who is pregnant with child. No way. So they're here. Mary gives birth. She swaddles him, which fits with everything we know of the Middle Eastern custom for childbearing at that time. And she lays him in a manger. That word for laid in the Greek, it can mean to recline, sometimes to recline at a table to have a meal. But if you look at one of the Greek lexicons, it gives the glosses for these meanings. To put to bed. She puts him to bed gently in a manger. And this is what the shepherds find. A welcoming home, a warm home, love, support, welcoming, not a cold, detached barn, not dejection, but this, what would have been considered at that time, this cozy, comfortable environment. And in the midst of all the busyness, they make room. Why did she put him in the manger? Whether it was one of the mangers that was brought up from the sheep or one of the ones that was dug in the hole. Because there was no room, no space in the guest room. So if they made space, what does that mean for us? What does it mean in the midst of all the good things that we're facing, the demands of life, everything that comes with Christmas time, to make room in our own hearts? In the midst of everything we're doing. I know for me, it's a lot up here. Even today I was challenged with this. My wife was doing great with it. She was getting stuff ready. I was a little bit more stressed. I need patience. I don't want to miss the joy of Christmas. Sometimes it's a Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Maybe it's a, Jesus, don't let me miss what this season is about. And having that awareness of him in the midst of it. Shopping online. Looking for that just right gift for that special person. Maybe it's sitting in traffic. Maybe it's planning, preparing your house for a meal. Preparing to have company and welcoming them. In those moments, are you making room for him? The very reason we do these things, that we have this gift of life, is because we have a God, a Savior, who came in the flesh, who came to be among us, who affirmed the goodness of his creation and what it means to be human. And because of that, we can move into these seasons and we can celebrate and we can do the things of life and meet the demands of life with a different kind of joy, knowing that the very presence of God, Emmanuel, God with us, is now with us. And that should start to change things a little bit. And I hope, and my prayer is for you in these next couple days, that you would just have small moments of the awareness of the King. That he's here, that he's with us, and he's available. And may we be available to him this Christmas season. So we're going to sing one more time, and then we're going to go, and we're going to enjoy some dessert together. So Merry Christmas. It's good to see your faces, and I'm grateful that we had a King who has come to dwell among us.